気分は最高だけどびっくり世界がどう
Welcome to the Super Sentai Brothers. This is episode 11 of The Spy Who Loved Megaranger, the internet's best and only podcast dedicated to Denji Sentai Megaranger. Every week we watch an episode of the show and we share our thoughts with you, the listener. My name is Matt J. With me as always is my co-host and brother Dave. Dave, how you doing today?
Doing pretty well, man.
Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Another beautiful day here in Cleveland, Ohio.
It is. It was kind of gross all day, and then right as my kids were going to bed, the sun came out and it cooled off, and it wasn't as humid.
Yeah, weird that
so I'm
the
hoping
sun
it sticks
coming
around
out,
for tomorrow.
The sun coming out and it cooling off happened at the same time, but it absolutely did.
It is odd, but whatever.
Well, we're in this I think the solstice was 2 days ago.
Yesterday. No, it was the 21st.
And so anyway,
So it's officially summer
officially summer. The king is back.
In America.
The king is back, baby. Currently wearing a shirt with birds on it and drinking a glass of chilled rosé.
Chilled rosé, huh?
Yeah. I've never been a big rosé guy.
Me neither.
Recently, though, it's been nice. I think part of it, honestly, is that because I'm not going out to bars, since I haven't been going out to bars and I haven't been going out to restaurants, that means I need to keep more food in my refrigerator because I'm not eating meals out, right?
Yeah.
Now, a corollary to this is that takes up, I don't know if we've talked about this on the show. This is sounding very familiar, and I don't know.
We actually did briefly, right? You'd no longer have as much fridge space for, cold beers.
Exactly. So I don't have as much fridge space for cold beers, but I do still like a cold bev. And so...
Love a cold bev.
And so a bottle of rosé takes up a lot less room, and you can store it, at room temp, and then just put it in the fridge later, as opposed to beer, which I feel like you sort of need to keep cold. Or else it'll, get skunky. Or at least that is what someone told me once, and I have always believed it.
Yeah, that feels right. And beer is always stored. Yeah, man, because at the grocery store, they always store beer in the cooler. Although that might just be because people prefer to buy cold beer.
Oh, I mean, I think that's part of it. Because the thing is, I think if it doesn't start as cold, you don't have to keep it cold. But I feel like once you've refrigerated it, if you then let it get to room temp and then put it back in the refrigerator,
then I feel like it does get funky.
But with the rosé, I just buy a bottle and I keep it sort of, around. And then if I feel like I want something, I just toss it in the fridge about midway through the day. And then after work, baby, it's rosé time. Anyway, welcome to Rosé Time. This is our new podcast.
It's a new podcast.
No, our podcast is still the same podcast, the one where we talk about Megaranger. And today we are talking about Megaranger, episode 11. It is called Look Out. Okay, did not realize this when we started talking it. Look Out, the lore of the Red Rose, which really, in this case, is the lore of the Red Rosé.
It got you. It got you.
Oh, man, dude, I cannot believe that I was setting up such a, perfect transition, but didn't realize I was doing it, so completely bungled it.
Matt, you live, you learn. Anyways, Matt.
Yes, but of course, before we get into that episode, Dave, first, we have our officially award-winning opening segment. As always, Dave, shining in the heavens, there are 5 stars. What is our first star of the week?
So, Matt, our first star of the week is Isolation Update. Isolation Update. So, here's the here's the truth, man. I feel like at this point, because we're still isolating pretty hard. I mean, about as hard as we've been kind of since the beginning. I know some people are going out a little bit more. We really are not. The only thing that we are doing is we are seeing people inside of our, socially monogamous circle. If this isn't an idea that you've heard of, allow me to clue you in, because this is a great idea. Basically, you kind of pick a handful of people, and you all get together and you say, listen, we're just going to form like a little group, and we're all observing kind of like the same level of precaution. So, everybody is like the same degree of safety, and then we can hang out with each other.
Yeah.
So like you've come over a few times.
Yeah. It's been great, really.
Yeah, and like we've seen our friends Bill and Jen, and they're all kind of in this circle with you and I and that. So, but other than that, we're still isolating really hard. But at this point, it's been like 4 months. And I'm just kind of used to it.
Yeah, an analogy that I heard recently was, do you remember and I'm sure you do, in The Princess Bride, when they go into the fire swamp, right? And when they're in, and I swear, I don't think this is an original thought. I'm pretty sure I heard somebody talking about this on a podcast, but I don't remember which one, or else I would give it credit. But when Wesley and Princess Buttercup enter the fire swamps, and there's like, fire geysers and the lightning sand, and they're in terrible danger, right? And then, sort of as they continue to go through the fire swamp, by the time they hit the other side of it, they've sort of experienced the dangers, and although the dangers still exist, they have gotten used to maneuvering around them in a way that, like, by the end, they feel very comfortable. I think
that's a really good
before
analogy.
Count Rugen comes and, like, hits him on the head with the butt of the sword.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is sort of where I am mostly.
Yeah, I think it's like at this point, it would, like, we might have a non-isolation update at some point, or a no longer isolating update, but now I just, like, I don't know, man. We're still just, like, in the house, and that's...
Yeah, I've been going to the store a little bit. Like, I've kind of stopped ordering my groceries.
Okay.
I've been doing grocery store runs. Put on a mask, get in out quick as I can.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, once a week. That's pretty...
Yeah.
That's well within guidelines.
Making some pickles. So, I'm on that stage.
Okay.
Still baking bread,
yeah.
also making pickles.
Right, you're sort of ramping up. Now, there is one thing I want to say before we sort of wrap up isolation update, which is if you're isolating,
good for you,
which you should be still, and you're getting most of your news through your daily news feed, you might not be seeing that protests across the country are still ongoing because the news media has sort of stopped paying attention to it because it's no longer headlines, because it's just still happening. But it is definitely still happening. And if you have the ability to be part of those protests, we would strongly encourage you to do so.
Stay home unless you're not staying home. And if you're not staying home, that's where you should be going.
Right. But don't stay home for like a good reason. Don't just go to the beach or something. Anyways, Matt, second star of the week. Speaking of a weird sense of normality, here's our second star of the week, Matt. Our second star of the week...
Hey, Dave?
What
is our second star of the week?
Oh, yeah, thank you. You know what? I couldn't quite find my footing with it, and I didn't realize what I was missing until you so graciously supplied it.
Well, Dave, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for you.
Anyways.
And for the listener.
So our second star of the week, Matt, is Hyundai's 4th of July sales event.
Oh, okay.
Well, okay. Allow me to clarify.
I'm more of a Toyotathon guy, but...
Well, I think that would probably work equally as well, because it's not the Hyundai 4th of July sales event that I care about. The thing that is so wild to me is that I saw a commercial for it. And the commercial was not with like a minor key piano in the background, and it wasn't shot in black and white, and there was no mention made of these uncertain times.
And now more than ever, you can buy a Hyundai.
Yeah, there was no... Right. It was just like dead on a regular commercial.
Hyundai's been here for you and your family for generations.
Yeah, nothing. None of that.
Just a big flag and telling you to come get like 0% APR.
Yeah, just like come on down to Steve's Hyundai or like whatever it was, and I saw it and I was so disconcerted and like discombobulated by the existence of just this regular commercial that was not even telling me how Hyundai was here for me in these uncertain times. Okay, here's what I think was so weird about it, is that I found it equal parts, like, very refreshing. Because it was like, oh, man, just like a regular commercial, and they just want me to come and I'm not going to buy a Hyundai, but, like, they just want me to come down and buy a Hyundai at a 4th of July sales event. And on the other hand, so it was equal parts kind of comforting and reassuring and deeply horrifying. Because Hyundai, there's still definitely a pandemic on.
Yeah, Hyundai's over
like,
it, man.
That has not changed and is, in fact, kind of getting worse because everyone's decided that it's cool now, and it 100% is not.
I mean, listen, have you ever caught coronavirus from a Hyundai? Probably not.
Well, you know what, Matt? I haven't, but I'll also tell you, I have been socially isolating from Hyundais.
Well, okay, that is fair.
I mean, that's not new. I have a general isolation from Hyundais.
That is your sort of standard policy, Hyundais.
Yeah, my default on Hyundai is that I'm distanced. But yeah, it was so weird. 'Cause, like, on one hand, I get it. It was nice that it was normal, but guys, things still just definitely are not normal, though.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, though. I bet they don't make new Hyundai 4th of July commercials every year. I bet they've got one dusty old commercial that they trot out every year and splice with the footage of the new cars. And they weren't going to go to all that bother, Dave. Shooting new footage is very difficult right now because you can't get people together because there's a pandemic. What were they going to do? Shoot the new commercial on Zoom?
I would love, Matt, if that were in fact the case.
If they were going to shoot it on Zoom, then it wouldn't be for Hyundai. Of course it would be for Volkswagen Zoom.
Yeah, I don't know what else it would be. It does seem like a lost merger opportunity for them. Like, you could have...
Yeah, man, if only Volkswagen hadn't given up that marketing campaign at least a decade ago.
Anyways,
bring
Matt,
it on back.
That was my bizarre experience the other day. What, Matt, is our third star of the week?
Third star of the week is I have been listening to... Okay, I have not been listening to a new podcast. I have newly been listening to a podcast that previously I had not listened to.
Okay,
there were too many words in that sentence,
clarified.
but you get what I mean.
No, I got you.
Anyway, it's extremely good. It is a podcast about movies. And Dave, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Matt, aren't all podcasts about movies? Aren't all podcasts two guys in their 30s talking about movies? And here's the thing. This is a podcast about two guys in their 30s talking about movies. But here's the twist. It's very good. And I say that as a guy in my 30s who has a podcast that talks about movies, which hey, Spectre, go listen to it. It's good. This podcast, though, it's called Blank Check.
Is it about the movie Blank Check?
Strangely, no. I think maybe they've done an episode on that one. But here is the hook of the show, and what I think makes it very interesting. It is specifically about directors and their filmographies.
Oh, okay. So, like, this week we're looking at Scorsese and, like, every movie he's ever done.
No, okay. Here's what's great about it. It's not this week we're looking at Scorsese. It's this set of however many episodes it takes. We are going through the films of Martin Scorsese.
Oh, wow, okay.
Or, like, here are all the Miyazaki movies. Here are all of the Nora Ephron movies. Here are all of the, M. Night Shyamalan movies. All of the Paul Verhoeven movies. So it's not just that they're talking about the movies, although they do talk about the movies individually.
Okay.
It's that, the thing that makes it so interesting is that they give you a lot of context of how this movie fits in that director's filmography, but also how it sort of like fits into the year that it came out and like the careers of the actors who were in it.
Oh, that does sound really cool.
And the two hosts are David Sims, I think Sims, who is either the or a film critic for The Atlantic, and Griffin Newman, who is an actor who played Arthur in the most recent live-action Tick show.
Oh yeah, I know that dude.
But also, like, apparently,
Maybe not personally, but
he's like a huge movie guy. Like, his dad was a movie producer, his mom was a casting director, his grandfather was an actor. Like, he grew up reading like the box office reports every week with his dad as a bonding thing.
That's super cool.
So like
you
they've got like this very deep well of like, not like knowledge of cinematography, although they have that too, but just like just tons of knowledge about Hollywood movies and its history, and listening to them talk about it with that sort of context. It's just a really good show. Very long episodes, but very good show.
No, I think is the best in my experience, like, form of podcast, is like somebody who is into something who does a really deep dive on a particular thing. And I think that's kind of, in a way, the glory of podcasts is that they're so cheap to produce.
Yeah.
That any two knuckleheads can decide they want to do one. And
right. They could, for example, spend 6 years talking about like every episode of a 6-year chunk of the grand history of Super Sentai.
Well, no, but I think that's a really good... I mean, okay, I was talking about those other guys, but we are also an example of that. And I think that's one of the things that's really fun about a podcast, is that because they're cheap to produce, they don't have to have a giant audience. Mm-hmm. And you can make it about like this really weird niche stuff. Like, nobody is going to make the Super Sentai Brothers as like a TV show.
They should.
Because they should. And Shout Factory is actually a tiny bit... Shout Factory, still waiting on that call, guys.
Waiting on that call.
Just saying. Anyways,
slide into those DMs, Shout Factory. It's all I'm saying.
Anyways, that sounds like a super cool podcast. I have actually also been. I just watched a new show.
Dave, I feel like we're in like 4th star territory now.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
We just want to sort of like roll. Okay, stars 3 and 4 are things that we have watched or listened to or interacted with this week.
There's some very good comics. Very good comics. Matt just
very
hit
good
Marvel
comics.
Unlimited today.
Dude, did you know those X-Men comics are really good?
Oh, dang, they're real good. They're real good. And I feel like the stuff they did with what Hickman set up. Mm-hmm. They just let Hickman do what he did best, which was retcon stuff. And then everybody
but also
sort of
recontextualize in an interesting way. It's not like it's not the sort of retcon that just changes things. It's the sort of retcon that sort of provides a new perspective on something moving forward, I guess, in a way that some people aren't as good at.
No, that's kind of what I'm saying, is that Hickman is... I mean, he's great in a lot of ways, and I do love his writing. But that, I think, is his particular, like, authorial superpower, is this ability to kind of, like, go back into the mythos of a comic and find something that fits perfectly, that you never would have thought of, but does make sense, and also, like, opens up, like, enormous new vistas of story and narrative possibility.
Man, you know who
the dude's a genius. I love him.
You know who else did a really good job with that? We might have talked about it on the show. And it's not like an in-continuity thing, but the X-Men Grand Design series by, I think it was Ed Piskor.
That sounds right, but I'm going to feel bad if we're wrong. But yeah, no, those are super great.
Really good. Just like takes all of X-Men's continuity and squishes it into like 6 issues of like very like tightly organized continuity. It's super. Definitely check it out if you haven't.
Anyway, so here's the show I've been watching. It's called Alone, and there's like a ton of seasons. There's like 9 seasons of this show, and it's on Hulu. It's from History Channel. Here is what Alone is. Have you ever seen Survivor Man?
I'm familiar with Survivor Man.
Okay, so Survivor Man is this guy, Les Stroud, and he goes out into an environment with like very minimal equipment or whatever equipment he may have reasonably had on him when he entered this survival situation, and he carries all his own cameras. There's no crew. There's no anybody. It's just Les Stroud.
Go ahead.
And
I got a great joke in a second, but
he just kind of tries to survive out there for a week.
So you're telling me that the concept of the show Survivor Man is that there is a man and he survives.
Yeah.
Okay.
They nailed it with the title. So here's the concept of Alone. It's competitive Survivor Man.
Okay.
They just take 10 people and they take them to a remote environment and they drop them off like a few miles from each other. And
they're alone. I guess that's the name of the show. I was going to say, because otherwise, competitive Survivor Man is Survivor.
No, it's not like
which is another show.
No, they're all out there alone, and they have a radio, and whenever you want, you can just call in the team and say, I'm tapping out. Like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. And then and then they come and pick you up, but you've lost. And the winner gets $500,000.
Okay.
And that's the show. And it's all just them shooting themselves, surviving and living in wherever it is that they've dropped you off.
Okay, so here's my big question about Alone. Is, say there are 10 contestants, right?
Yeah.
When contestant number 9 radios into base and says, you know what? This stinks. Like, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. And they go home.
I mean, these are not celebrities, by the way.
I know. I'm a celebrity, get me out of here is the name of a different show.
Okay.
Do they then, like, go find number 10 and say, like, hey, you win?
They do, but only with number 10.
Okay.
You have no idea. At no point do you have any idea how many other competitors are left.
Okay, see, it's good that they do that, because otherwise, like, you would potentially have multiple seasons of this show filming at once, just because the last guy of season 4 never went home.
Oh, no, dude. Like, by the end of this show, they are pulling people for, like, because they do, like, periodic medical checks.
Okay.
By the end of the show, they are pulling people for med. They're like, no, dude, you are about to go into, like, starvation level, like, organ failure starvation. We're pulling you. Like, good for you. Your brain beats your body, but we can't let you die in Patagonia.
That would be a bad TV show.
It's a very bad television. So anyways, it's
because the name of the show is Alone, not Carl Dies Alone in Patagonia.
Yeah. Anyways, it's
which
a
I
great
feel like
show.
you could only get away with one season, right?
I don't think
season 2 of Carl Dies Alone in Patagonia, when Carl 3 shows up to that audition, he's like, "Hey,
Carl.
So the title of this show, that's a joke, right?"
Sure, Carl, totally is. Don't even worry about it.
In loving memory of Carl's 1 and 2.
I one time saw a vanity license plate and it said Carl's VI, but Carl 4.
I think we've talked about this on the show.
Man, maybe
also, that
we
would
have.
Be Carl
it really
6.
made an impression. And Carl 4 is, that's a little bit of a bummer for Carl 4. But, like, Carl just rolling around, like, with no numbers, you're just the first dude to nab Carl. That's dope. Like, that's an extreme flex.
Oh, sure.
Particularly,
Carl Prime?
I think, on other Carls.
Oh, yeah. Imagine that you're Carl 4, and then, you're driving around and you see Carl.
Oh, my gosh. The shame.
Oh. Anyway, I've been playing No Man's Sky. It's fun, but there's a lot of managing your menu in it. I'm glad that I can finally play it after 4 years because it's on the Game Pass now. I am also glad that I did not go out and buy a PlayStation to play it 4 years ago.
That was the impression that I got from a lot of people.
It's much better now than it was at launch. They've improved a lot of things.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
I don't know because I haven't played at launch. But anyway, it was very fun. Dave, what is our 5th and final Star of the Week?
So, Matt, our 5th and final Star of the Week is Beth, for Father's Day, got me some tart pans, but also a new pastry book.
Ooh.
And it's a very good book, and it is called The Art of French Pastry, right? Yeah, The Art of French Pastry. And it is by a guy. He is extremely French. His name is Jacques. I'm going to mess up the pronunciation a little bit. Jacques. It's spelled like Pfeiffer, like Michelle Pfeiffer. I'm not sure quite how you would say that in French. Feffier? I'm not sure. Anyways, the dude is extremely
That's
French.
one of the options.
Sure. But, and this is fun, Matt, he is Alsatian.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this is only relevant because Matt and I's family is from Alsace-Lorraine, which is a region in France, like way back. I mean, we're mutts now. We're about as Alsatian as we are Chinese by like percentage, I guess. But that's originally where our family is from.
Not actually
for
Chinese
half of
at all, but
well, that's what I'm saying. It's like we're not Chinese at all, but we're also basically not Alsatian. But this dude, he has the whole book is French pastry, and then he has like a special section for like, oh, these are like the Alsatian specialties that I like grew up eating and particularly love.
ah.
And Alsace-Lorraine is right on the border between France and Germany. And there's one or two spots where he does a bit of like fist shaking at the Germans. Like over years and years of like occupation by Germans, like Alsatians have learned to be thrifty people. And like there's like one or two other little things in there. But then when you get to the section on like specialty Alsatian treats that he super loves,
It's all just German food.
it's all just German stuff. It's like Kugelhof and Stollen, and there's like a honey cake, and there's like a thing with streusel, and there's this honey cake, and he gives you the French name for it, and he says, but in Alsace-Lorraine or in Alsace, we call it Beinenstich. It's like, hey, my dude, if you're gonna like rack on Germans for like occupying France, maybe don't be quite so stoked about German pastries.
Oh yeah, dude! I remember that year that I lived in Normandy right after college. There was a an Alsatian style restaurant in the city I lived in.
Cool.
And like you would go in, it's like, oh yeah, you want like sausage and potatoes and sauerkraut? Here you go, French food.
Love it. Anyways, there's a great recipe for brioche in here, and I'm gonna try to make some.
Ooh, let me know how that goes. I really
will.
want to try brioche, but my mixer I don't think would like actually stand up to the rigors it needs.
Yeah,
like,
you really gotta
to like
knock
really
the
beat
snot
that
out of
dough
it.
for like half an hour.
Anyways, Matt, that is our fifth star of the week.
Cool. Well, in that case, Dave, we're going to take a break. We are going to watch episode 11 of Denji Sentai Megaranger. I am going to refill this glass of the lure of the red rosé, and we will be right back. All right, welcome back. Dave, Megaranger still rules.
Still rules.
This is the first episode, because I had been watching ahead. We have now caught up to where I had been watching ahead. So this is the first episode in a while that is like fresh to me as we're doing the episode. Man, it's
cool.
good episode.
Yeah, dude.
Shibolino is great. Shibolino
Yeah,
is
I feel like a joke.
Shibolino is going to be like near the top of my list of like generals. Like at the end of the year, I think.
I was gonna say if
continues
she on this kind of trajectory, yeah, I feel like a dope because I want to say more than just like, yeah, it's great and she rules, but like it was a great episode and Shibolina's a real good villain.
Yeah.
So
We get sort of a different perspective on her this episode. It's okay. Well, we will get into it.
Yeah,
we'll get
there.
into it right now.
Right now. So this is a Chisato episode.
Yes.
Very cool. This is a Chisato focus episode, which I dig. I really like Chisato. She's a great character. I am also very interested in her because she is not a super stereotypical Yellow Ranger.
Okay. I am familiar with the concept that you're throwing at me, but unpack it a little bit for me.
Yeah, sure. So actually, she may represent a real transition. So in most of the early season, by early,
You mean the first 20
I really
years of the
mean
show?
like first 20 odd years of the show. And we see this in like Raita and Juri and
Kazu?
yeah, we see it in Kazu. And I was trying to remember Car Ranger all of a sudden. Now I feel really bad.
Oh,
Anyways.
the Yellow Ranger from Car Ranger. Well,
who
that
we really like.
clearly is our old friend.
Check. Yeah, I know. I can't remember her name all of a sudden. Anyways, Yellow Rangers, like in the first 20 years of the show, are the bruisers. They're like the even when they're ladies, they're like big, strong. Their attitude is like they're tough, or they're like the big burly one, right? Like Raita wasn't like a tough guy, but he was like big and strong and threw rocks and stuff. Like this is like a really important, like that's kind of the mold of a Yellow Ranger.
Yeah.
And then in like, as we're getting into it, like late 90s and 2000s, it started to transition that the Yellow Ranger became much more like a sort of serious, like they're the smart one. They introduced that character type for the Yellow Ranger. So you can either still be like the big strong one, or you can be like a really clever, like smart, you're the strategist.
Yeah, and like the sort of big strong archetype doesn't go away, right? Because like once you hit Time Ranger, the Yellow Ranger from Time Ranger is like a cage fighter from the future.
Yeah, it never disappears.
Most of the people in Time Ranger are from the future. Time Ranger is great, man. I hope we get to it.
Yeah, that trope doesn't disappear from the Yellow Ranger. It just, there's new options, right? It's not always that. And I feel like Chisato is maybe the first inklings that we're seeing of like, hey, let's kind of try something new with the Yellow Ranger. Let's make a Yellow Ranger that isn't a tough guy or a bruiser or a whatever.
I think Chisato is emotionally tough.
She is, yeah, definitely. But I think we're starting to see with her that she is a planner and a sort of a hold the team together sort of Yellow Ranger, and we're going to see a lot more of that in the future. And this is really cool because
Chisato would be a great Red Ranger.
She would be a fantastic Red Ranger. She would actually be a much better Red Ranger than Kenta is, frankly.
I don't know how Kenta would be as a Yellow Ranger. But I think that Chisato...
Actually, he would work really well as a Yellow Ranger.
Yeah, because some Yellow Rangers love to eat all the time.
Yeah, like that is also a big Yellow Ranger thing. Like Yellow Rangers love to eat. They love to like... They have
big personalities, big appetites.
Yeah, big appetites. So Kenta is actually a much better Yellow Ranger, and Chisato, oh man, what a lost opportunity.
And you know what's interesting?
Chisato would have been so boss as a Red Ranger.
Is that... Koichiro is a much more Blue Ranger, and Shun is much more of a Black Ranger.
Yeah, they really are.
They kind of juggled everything around this season, which is interesting.
Yeah, Miku is a hardcore Pink Ranger, though.
Oh, 100%.
So anyways, this is a Chisato episode, which is stoked because we love Chisato. So what it is she says it's a voiceover from her, and she's like, it all began at the beginning of spring break, and she's shooting a model because she's a photographer. That's like her thing. We can't see who the model is.
Right. Basically, what we are looking at is the point of view of the person that Chisato is photographing and talking to.
Yes. So, and it very much, the vibe they're giving it is that Chisato has met someone.
Right.
She's met a very special someone, and she says, the camera brought us together. Okay, so this seems like a romantic thing, and this is going to be reinforced because we're at the high school, and the Rangers see Chisato, and they're whispering, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, what is going on with Chisato?
Right. Like, I think what happens is that Miku was hanging out with Chisato, and Miku was like, oh my gosh, Chisato is obviously in love. She tells the other three, and they're like, no way, not Chisato.
Like, that's
the
impossible.
Person who everyone in this show wants to date. How could she possibly be dating someone? So they go and they sort of spy on her. She is in a kitchen in the school.
She's in the home ec room is what I would imagine.
And she is decorating a cake, and she is like singing to herself and having a lovely time. Miku says, see, she is in spring mode, which Koichiro, like me, has no idea what she's talking about. But apparently this is something that the other people recognize as...
Like, she's in love.
Yeah, it's slang for it. Yeah, she is in love.
Right, spring, when young men's fancies turn to thoughts of love.
Right.
The next scene we see is that Chisato is in a room and she like starts to take off her jacket, and then she sort of is like, oh wait, and she sort of like prances over and turns and flips the blinds down in like the classroom that she's changing in. And then the other Rangers were just like standing like right outside that window, kind of checking out what was going on. Like, guys, were you?
Well, they were snooping on her because she's changing in the kitchen room, right?
Yeah.
There's like lockers in there for some reason. And I think they were spying on her decorating the cake, on which she has written happy birthday in English. And then when she goes to change, like, that's weird that she's changing at school. And Koichiro pulls out his student manual handbook and is actually, it is against the rules. When you are on school property, you must be dressed in a uniform. I'm very concerned for her that she is like, breaking the rules in such a way. And everyone is just like, oh my gosh, you are... I think Shun calls him inexorable.
Yeah, that is exactly the phrase. He's like, what do you mean? I just, it's the rules though, guys.
And I think it's Kenta agrees, like, yeah, you're inexorable. And then
no, it's Shun.
Oh, no, well, Shun agrees, but then I think Kenta also agrees and then has to turn to Miku and say, like, what does inexorable mean? It's either Kenta or Miku who does that, and they ask the other one. Feels like a Kenta moment, though.
It is. So, they kind of like duck out and hide, and then they're like, okay, well, obviously there's only one thing to do,
and that is to put on a quote unquote disguise and to tail her.
Right. What they do is they duck in and they steal some clothes from the like lockers and put on very, very bad disguises.
Right. Koichiru's only disguise is that he is wearing the exact same clothes, but has put a baseball batting helmet on.
Now, the one thing I do like about this is that all of them except Koichiru are trying to cover up their face, so they do definitely look like they are prepared to go out in public right now. As of June 2020. I saw them going out. I was like, that looks really familiar. Why does that look familiar? Oh, right, because everybody walks around, well, most people are walking around with their faces covered. So
they follow her. They get on the same bus as her.
Yeah.
They're doing a very clumsy job of following her.
Extraordinarily bad. You almost could not do a worse job. So as they're walking, they're following Chisato, and then we kind of get like a forward shot, and there's children walking along, and then there's this nun, and the nun has a bunch of roses, and she's giving children roses.
Mm-hmm.
We are about to get into something that is kind of a recurring theme in, I guess you could just say like Japanese media sort of writ large, because you see it a lot in anime too, which is the exoticization of like the West, I guess, in general, but like Roman Catholicism specifically.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, this is definitely the sort of like a sort, like a blade that cuts both ways, because for sure. It is something that happens in Western culture too. This is like, hey, put some kanji on this thing, and now it's cool.
Oh yeah, and I think that's the thing that I actually do sort of appreciate seeing it, because it gives you the perspective of like, this is very weird. Like, as a Westerner, watching you do this thing is very strange. And it's good to have that perspective to remember that, like, Westerners doing the same thing is also it's gotta look weird, like, obviously. But it's also sort of like, man, everybody does this. Everybody looks at everybody else's stuff and it's just like, man, that thing those guys are doing over there is pretty cool. And, like, I totally don't really get it, but it is
but, like,
real
the costumes
neat.
Are neat.
Like, the costumes are cool, so we're gonna roll with it. I think it's great. Anyways. So they're all sort of wondering who it is that Chisato is going to meet. And Kenta voices a hope that he's going to get to see some, like, hot girl-on-girl action, basically.
Yeah, like, I have it in my notes as Koichiro and Miku having this conversation. But, like, so what somebody said, like, they are talking like, I wonder who this guy is. And the other person's like, I don't know, maybe it's a cute girl, which honestly, based on the episodes that we have seen so far, seems a bit more likely.
Yeah, it does not seem at all inconceivable.
You know what? At this point, it feels as though the show is doing that on purpose.
Like
there have been enough episodes with Chisato just like, hey, let's you and me go on a date, Miku, and like hanging out a lot with what was her name in the first episode with Bat Nezare? Kenta's friend from middle school.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember.
Anyway, and then in this, it's like, I don't know, maybe she's dating a girl. It really does feel as though the show is just like, listen, we might not be coming out and saying it, but, you know, wink, wink.
I dig it. Great job,
Yeah.
Sentai. So anyways, and it's not. It is a girl, but it's a little girl.
Yes.
It is a little sister, friend, niece, something we don't really know. Important plot point: she does have one of these roses.
Yes.
And so Chisato gives her the cake.
Her name is
and-
Ruri, by the way.
Ruri, yes, thank you. So Chisato gives her the cake, and Ruri's like, "Oh my gosh, this is so great! Super excited for my birthday! Like, I will see you there." And Ruri sort of skips off.
Chisato then turns around and she's like, guys, you can come out now. I know you've been following me. You've been doing a terrible job. I know where you are. Please, just come on.
Yeah. So then we cut over to Ruri. We get a little Bach toccata and fugue style pipe organ. The flower glows, and then Ruri is very clearly mind controlled.
Yeah, the nun shows up briefly and sort of like stares at her intently. And then she drops the cake and starts walking away, just sort of like, like turns the corner and starts walking up a hill.
Yeah. They do a real quick explanation where Chisato says like, oh, like I was out taking pictures because I wanted to take some pictures for this contest. I saw Ruri. I thought she looked great. She has a great smile. I asked if I could take pictures. She said yes. And check out this mag. I got second place. Rad.
By the way, would not have noticed it if they hadn't mentioned Ruri's amazing smile, but Ruri has maybe the worst teeth I've ever seen on television.
They do.
She's a little girl. Little kids have messed up teeth. I'm not saying this is anything against her, but like she has particularly weird looking teeth.
Like they did specify, oh, she has such a lovely smile.
Right. And Ruri is a little girl that looks very nice when she smiles. That is very true.
Now I feel bad. Now we've made it this
now
whole
I feel
thing
badly about bringing it up. But
child.
like, boy, oh boy, just because they call attention to it, and you're like, now I'm in for the smile of my life, and then you look at it, and there's a moment. There's a moment that is a little jarring.
Dude, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the show before, but Buddy Bear, my son, has like weirdly perfect teeth. Like he's only a little kid, but he has like a full on, like they're perfectly straight and white. Like he has like a movie star smile.
That's also upsetting to me as someone who had braces for many years.
He has, listen, I think his sister may well need braces, but like that kid, and maybe he'll grow out of it and need them later. I don't know. But like as of right now,
we can only hope.
Wait, that he won't grow out of it, Matt. We're not rooting for him to have braces.
Well, listen, I guess you'll have to pay for that, so I shouldn't.
You say that at least.
I'm just saying that. Listen, as a young man with less than perfect teeth, I'm resentful. It's fine.
Anyways, yeah, it's pretty weird. He's always had perfect teeth. So, anyways, we see all these kids. Oh, they see the cake. The Rangers are like, come around the corner, and they see where the cake has been dropped. Chisato recognizes it, and she's like, ooh, this is weird and bad. And then they sort of look up, and they're under like a little bridge thing, and they look up, and there's a bunch of kids that are kind of zombie walking. Not like zombie walking, like mind-controlled walking.
Yeah. It is actually also in my notes as a zombie walk. But yes,
Yeah.
it is. It's just like a mindless stroll.
Mindless shuffle, yeah. So they go, there's a church, and there's red roses on the door, and the kids all walk in, and the Rangers run up, and then the nun stops them, and she says, oh, I'm sorry, you can't come in. Today's service is only for children. And let me just say, Roman Catholic Church, you do not have a great history of doing stuff that was only for children.
Dave, that is true. Now,
Was that a children's... Sorry, I was making a children's crusade joke.
Oh, I tell you what, Dave, you might not have known it. You were making 2 jokes.
Yeah, did not think about that one. I was just making a children's crusade joke. But it does work on multiple levels.
Now, this may be clear to you at this point. These are not real nuns.
They are definitely not real nuns.
These are evil monsters pretending to be nuns. We'll get into the specifics in a minute, but just so that you've got a little foreshadowing. You haven't necessarily watched the episode, so you can't see the look in their eyes that is clearly evil.
Dude, if you're I don't know, if you're this far into just listening to this podcast, I feel like you probably put together that the person handing out roses was a monster.
I don't think we've ever seen a nun or priest on this show that wasn't a monster, have we?
There was the time when Kaori was supposed to get married to another rich dude and got as far as the altar.
Oh, that's
and
right.
That priest was not a monster.
There have been a few wedding scenes that have priests that aren't monsters.
Yes. Speaking of wedding scenes, Matt, I did just, because I saw it on the page, for a lark, go back and watch the last 7 or 8 minutes of the last episode of Jetman.
Oh, you just want to have a good cry?
Oh, dude. It's still... It
cuts like a knife, much like the knife
does, man.
that killed Guy.
Man, it was so good. Well, I know we've been talking about how great Koichiro is, and he is really great. I'm like, man, is he going to be a better Black Ranger than Guy? And
those 8 minutes reminded you that he's got a tall mountain to climb.
He's got a tall mountain to climb, man.
Doing a good
he
job.
might get a
Only
piece of that.
Yeah.
He might get a piece of that glowing crag, Matt.
Piece of that radical rock?
Yeah. So anyways, Chisato's like, this is obviously very weird. And they're all like, yes, this is weird. And so they kind of run around the side, and Chisato sort of pokes her head up, and she's looking in a window. And then we get the scene. And the nun is up front, and she's saying, the roses are delighted to see you, children. And then there's the organ again. And then they sort of toss petals, and then the petals land in front of the kids. And then they turn into, they say holy rose water?
That is what they say, yes.
It does. I'm not sure about the translation here or whatever, but it is definitely looks like Holy Communion.
Yeah.
And man, I actually did get pretty uncomfortable for a minute. I was just like, yeah, I know this is like a knife that cuts both ways, but I am real uncomfortable, which is also a good reminder that I don't know, man, the Buddha's a real thing for people. Anyways, be cool about people's stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, the important part here is, oh man, Matt.
By the way, at this point, have you realized that the nun is Shibolena? By the way, the nun is Shibolena.
The nun is Shibolena. I guessed that she was.
Because she's not she's in a disguise, but she's not covering her face.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is Shibolena, just kind of based on how this episode is going. But I do not have a clear enough picture of her face in my mind that divorced from her costume, I was able to see her and be like, oh, that's Shibolena.
Because her costume is so distinctive that that is sort of the image that lives in my head. What I was thinking is wow, this nun's sort of a babe. And then when I found out later it was Shibolena, I was like, oh, right, sure, of course.
Well, yeah, Shibolena is definitely sort of a babe. So they turn into monster flower children.
Yes, all of them except for Rory. Because Rory is not drinking the special rose water.
Yeah, well, Chisato manages to get her attention for 1 or 2 little moments, and Rory is able to lock in on that and kind of resist the mind control.
By the way, there's this moment in here, and I'm sorry for interrupting because this might be what you were about to say, is we cut back to the organ, and and the nun who had been playing the organ turns, and they're still wearing the nun's clothes, But their face you can now see is that of oh gosh, Dave, I keep forgetting what they're called. The putties.
The Twisty Wisties.
The Twisty Wisties.
The Twimpy Wimpies.
It's a Twisty Wisty. It's a Twisty Wisty in a nun's habit. It's
a great visual.
If it wasn't creepy, it would be hilarious.
It is kind of creepy.
Oh,
though.
this whole bit is creepy.
Yeah, it is. It's real weird. So anyways, what we see is that, like, okay, she is kind of managing to, you know, like lock herself in on this like memory of Chisato.
Yeah. And
So Ruri
Shibalina
is-
like realizes this. She's like, something is stopping you from doing it. She looks over, sees Chisato peeking in the window, sort of like stares hard at the window. The window slams shut. A bunch of Twisty Wisties run outside to go fight them. And the other 4 Mega Rangers are like, listen, we'll deal with these guys. You go save Ruri.
Yeah, we're good.
And I guess the other kids if you have the opportunity. But, like, obviously that's the only one we care about, really.
Yeah, so
For the purposes of this episode.
There's a real brief aside where we go to the Nezare dimension and we see Hinalar and Ugande sort of like viewing this plan in action. They're like, this is a great plan. And we find out that Shibalina created Rose and Nezare using like a mix of Rose DNA and her own DNA. So like Rose Nezare that we haven't seen yet, but Rose Nezare is like half Shibalina and half Roses. Okay. So we're back at the church, like, ooh, beautiful twisted flowers. Ruri drops her drink, and then Shibalina the nun comes over and it's like, why aren't you drinking, my child? I mean, like, aside from the obvious Shibalina that all the kids who drank it turned into horrible rose monsters, Shibalina clearly is like, why isn't my mind control working?
Yeah. She's like reads Rory's mind a little bit and sees
she does,
images
like, a little
of
mind meld
Chisato.
thing.
And then Rory like breaks free of it and runs away. And Shibalina is like, oh man, love a spirited kid. Anyway, I'm gonna go murder that child, but boy, I love a spirited kid. And then there's a great moment.
Oh man, this is such a sick transition.
Where like she stands still for a second, and there's like cracks that appear all over her clothes, and then they shatter and fly away from her, and then underneath you just see like, and her face is static the whole time. And you just see like her regular Shibalina clothes on it. So what has actually happened, Dave? She has shattered the vestments that she was wearing. She has broken her habit.
Hey!
Very good joke.
That was a great joke. So, you know it was great because I didn't laugh, but I did say that was a great joke.
I have it in my notes, Dave. She breaks the habit. Great joke.
So, the Rangers are fighting. Chisato like runs after Ruri. We see Ruri. She's running away. She trips, and then Chisato appears. It's very obviously not Chisato. It is definitely Shibalina.
Yeah. By the way, this is the halfway part of the
Disguised
episode.
somehow.
I know we've been talking for a full hour. We are at the halfway point of this episode.
Yeah, it's a big episode. So, anyways, she's like, this holy water will calm you down, my child. It's like, okay, well, you didn't try super hard to like.
You didn't even change the way
her.
that it looks.
Yeah, it's in the same glass and everything. Ruri's like, this is not good, and she like backs up and then falls over and passes out. And Chisato shows up and she's like, I will defeat you. And Shibalina's like, I don't know who the heck you are, but you're very definitely just a person, and I will murder you. And Chisato thinks to herself, like she's about to install. And then she says, ooh, wait. If I install right now, she'll know it's me, so, like, I can't. So she just tries to attack her anyways, and that goes about as well as you think it will.
Right. She gets, like, thrown back against a tree and knocked over. What's funny is there's a real close-up on her face as Shibalina is, like, blasting her with, like, this air blast. And I think what they do is they just, like, just off camera pointed a leaf blower at Chisato's face because you can see, like, her cheek, like, moving around with the wind.
I was actually pretty impressed
Very
that they did that. Because a lot of time they just kind of like grimace into the camera.
Yeah, and then there's like an energy whip when they fly around. But this was an interesting, this was a fun effect.
So anyways, Shibolena, like we said, she recognizes her.
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, you're the girl." She says,
"You're the girl that's
in
in Rory's memory."
Right. Like, I will destroy you, and then I will destroy her memories of you, and then I will get her. And so she sort of holds the cake, and then the cake just ignites, which is cold. But apparently the cake was the key. Because then Rory wakes up and is like, all right, well, I guess I'm mind-controlled now. And so she just goes to drink it.
Oh, by the way, I don't think we mentioned this. When we went to the Nezare dimension, this is not important. I don't know why I'm bothering with it, but I've already started saying it, so here we go. When we go to the Nezare dimension, we find out the reason they are doing this is that they're going to, like, this is a test to see if it works. Then they're going to do it all over the world, so all children will be rose monsters, which will mean that humanity has no future. Because, of course, children are our future, so if you turn all the children into rose monsters, eventually all the adults will die, and there will be no one to replace them except for rose monsters. Then, checkmate.
Got it.
Nezare wins. It's the long game.
Yeah, it's an extremely good plan.
Anyway, cake burns, Rory drinks the drink, she turns into a little tiny rose monster.
Yeah.
Have we talked at all about Rose Nezare, the monster? Because we have seen it at this point.
Oh, no, we haven't. Rose Nezare has a dope look.
Absolutely.
So it's like a rose face, and then it's sort of like a twisty.
Well, it's a lady's face with like a sort of like a rose, like, collar ruffle,
like Elizabethan collar, like a Shakespeare ruff, but made out of rose petals. And then they did a really neat job of incorporating elements from Shibolena's costume into Rose Nezare. Like, Shibolena has this like patterned mosaic, like, of different colored tiles, like on a lot of her like boots and gloves, and then like that makes it onto Rose Nezare. And then the other half of it is like a twisty vine monster.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So once Ruri is transformed, Chisato says, like, okay, well, now it just doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I have to do what I can to save Ruri. So she installs.
Yeah. Now, crucially, in the moment she installs, Shibolena has her back turned to her because Shibolena is still looking at Ruri. So, like, she's there and she installs. So Shibolena can infer that, like, oh, that girl is Mega Yellow. But
and does.
And does, yeah. But hasn't actually seen the transformation happen.
Yeah. There's a bit of a fight. We see Shibolena has a sword, and it's real cool because it's mostly a sword. And then at the end, it goes into this like twisty corkscrew thing.
Super good.
I really dig how much they're working like spirals and twists into the costuming and monster design of this show. Like the design conceptualization goes pretty deep.
Yeah. So
deeper I feel like than a lot of the shows that we've seen.
Yeah, and
the monsters have a very unified aesthetic.
And what's interesting about it is that it's not all like a big, super obvious things. It's like nice, cool little touches like that.
Yeah. So we get a fight between the Rangers and Rose Nezare.
Yeah, because at this point, Shibolena's like, listen, A, now I know who you are, obviously, so that was dumb. And B, you should, like, I'm going to kill you, but you shouldn't even be worried about that. What you really should be worried about is the fact that right now, Rose Nezare is murdering your 4 friends. And it cuts to the fight with Rose Nezare versus the other 4.
And it seems as though it's actually going very well for the Rangers, but what we find out pretty quickly is that Rose Nezare has real intense regenerative powers. Like any hit that any hit that she takes after, she just like immediately heals right back up.
Right. Like they cut off her arm and arm grows back. They knock her down, she gets back up.
Like in that case, they literally just like reverse the footage. Like they just play it in reverse. It's great. So then we're back to Chisato fighting Shibolina,
Yeah,
and
Shibolina-
Shibolina hits her with an attack and just like teleports her away, seemingly.
There is a moment where Shibolina says, like, obviously Rose Nezare is going to win. She's part of me. She always wins. And I wonder what the data set on that is, because it feels like she's brand new and this is her first fight.
Yeah. So, in the interest of time, what Shibolina has actually done is not teleported Mega Yellow away, but has created like an illusory mindscape that she has trapped Yellow in.
Yeah, I really love this because Shibolina is like a weird mind control villain, right? Like every time we've seen her, that's what she does.
Her thing.
And we've always seen it sort of from the outside. Like we know that Shibolina has controlled the minds of those people. But in this case, we're getting it from the perspective of one of the main characters. So we actually see sort of a expression of Shibolina affecting the mind of the character. And it's this really... It goes on for a while. There's multiple stages to it. But like they go into like this mind escape that is different and better than the sort of thing we normally get, which is just like a different foggy extra dimension. Although it does include a stop into a different foggy extra dimension.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be Sentai if it didn't, but she creates like 3 or 4 scenarios that she makes Mega Yellow run through. They're doing a very cool job of kind of jumping back and forth between the fight with the Rangers and Rose Nezare and Shibolina versus Mega Yellow.
My favorite bit of that, and I know we are going long, but I did want to say this one thing about the like mindscape stuff, is my favorite bit that they go through is that there's a moment where she turns around and suddenly she is giant in the city and everyone is running away from her as though she is a monster.
That was really good.
What's really cool about it is that like, yeah, a Sentai show can do that because they already have a set that is like built to the scale where if you just put a person in it, they look giant.
Man, I would pay hard American dollars.
We have talked about this.
We have discussed this extensively. I just want to be clear that it's still very true.
It's such a clever use of the resources that they already have on hand. I love it.
So, we get a lot of back and forth. It is a great action sequence, but we are running long. Eventually, they get in the other Rangers get in contact with Mega Yellow, and they're like, dude, we do not know what is going on. Like, do you have anything for us?
I don't even think they're getting in contact. I think it's that they are saying it, and like...
Oh, maybe that's it.
They are fighting Rose Nezare, and Rose Nezare is part of Shibolina, and Shibolina is currently like in Mega Yellow's mind. So she just sort of like gets this wave of them not knowing what to do.
And so she uses her Digicam scan, and she's like, oh, Rose Nezare is part of Shibolina. And in this case, apparently, that doesn't just mean is genetically descended from, it means is linked to in a Tomax Xamot sort of way. And she says, if I can, like, that's why they can't beat Rose Nezare, because Shibolina is fine.
Right.
If I can beat Shibolina, then they should be then, like, that will weaken Rose Nezare, and they'll be able to do it.
Now, Dave, one problem here. It's very difficult to beat Shibolina, because during the course of this like series of fights, Mega Yellow has dropped all of her weapons. What's she going to do without any weapons, Dave?
Well, man, it would be a problem, except that she just busts out a brand new technique called Blade Arm.
Yes, she does.
Where she just holds up her arm, and she like runs a hand up it, and she just creates like a lightsaber on her like outside forearm and hand, and then just like power runs at Shibolina and blade arms her in the face.
It's extremely good.
Yeah, man.
Love a blade arm.
Love a blade arm. It's pretty boss. So she does that to Shibolina, and then when she does that, Rose Nezare also takes the hit. Again, Tomax and Xamot style. The mindscape disappears.
That doesn't kill Rose Nezare, but it does weaken her. And so now that like link has been broke because Shibolina is injured, now Galaxy Mega can like actually go in and defeat Rose Nezare, which it does pretty quickly.
And then that's kind of it. Then Shibolina is like, well, you did beat me, but now I know who you are. And next time, death for you. And then Chisato runs up to Mega Yellow and says like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for saving me. You're the best. And then Shibolina's like,
Weird.
well, I'm not sure what's going on here, but clearly that girl that I thought had something to do with it has nothing to do with it, and I won't hunt her down and kill her later. And then she just sort of teleports away. And Chisato's like, well, Mega Yellow's like, what is happening? And then the other Rangers show up, and Shun says, that is my virtual holograph. Pretty cool, huh? And he says it in a way that, like, as though he's trying to convince them that it's cool. Yes, it's extremely cool.
Yeah, and in this moment, I kind of realized that, do you remember in, like, the second episode, there was a whole thing where Shun's, like, greatest computer skill was, like, designing... computer graphics.
Like
computer graphics
this is
and stuff.
his thing.
And it did not occur to me that, like, that is why he's the digital TV guy, because, like, that's sort of like the closest thing they could figure to that. So, like, he's really good at generating computer images, and he's like, oh yeah, like I can just do that with my powers now.
Yeah,
extremely good.
It's excellent. So then Chisato, the new scene, and Chisato meets Worry, and there's a new cake, and then the other Rangers are also there. They're like, oh, we thought we would join in, and they made a whole picnic thing, and Worry is like, oh man, like, this is so great, guys, like, what can I do to thank you? And Chisato's like, just let me take more pictures of you. And I was like, I know this is innocent, but out of context, that line gave me the creeps.
Not super cool.
I mean, it is. It's 100% innocent.
Yeah.
Just like, come, child, like, have cake. The only thing I ask is that you let me take pictures of you. Like,
and on that note...
On that note, it's the end of the episode.
But David, it's not the end of our episode. Unbelievably, we're still going. Because first, we need to determine where Rose Nezare lands in the Creature Royale. Dave, Rose Nezare is very good.
Rose Nezare is very good, but we don't actually see a whole... Like, she's got a great look.
Uh-huh.
But, again, I think we're running into... It's the same sort of thing we've been talking about, where really, this is not a Rose Nezare episode. This is a Shibolina episode.
Okay, that's true.
And Shibolina is really excellent. And I think it feels like... our boss list is inversely proportional in many ways to our monster list.
Yeah, in some ways.
You know what I mean?
This happened to us a lot in Car Ranger too, where it would be like a really good episode with, like, you know, one of the Barbarians, but the Bozoke, that's what they were called.
Yeah.
I do remember some things from that show. But yeah, like, but it wouldn't necessarily be a great episode for, like, whatever monster it was.
Yeah, well, like, Gray is our best monster, but, you know, we don't really have... There aren't many dimension monsters in our very high up ones, and our very high up monsters, you know, but there are a lot of monsters in our top rankings from Die Ranger and Conquer Ranger. Anyways, we're getting off on a tangent.
Okay, so here's my kickoff point. I think that Rose Nezare could most easily compared to Kama Itachi the Sickle Weasel.
He is I feel like we end up comparing a lot to him, but he's a very prominent mind control monster.
He's a prominent mind control monster, and he also transformed children into creepy monster things.
Ooh, good point. Wait, there was somebody else who transformed children into actual plant monsters.
Oh, gosh. Was it the Great Tomato King? No, he just turned everybody into tomatoes.
He just turned everybody into tomatoes. It was a monster from Car Ranger. Anyways, I think Kame Itachi is a good spot to start.
I think Rose Nezare looks so cool.
Rose Nezare does look super, super cool.
And, like, the fight with her is really good. And the sculpt on her head and her hair is really good. Like, she's a good-looking monster. And, like, a really, like... she's just so interesting to see. And although the plan is, like, Shibolina's plan and not the monster's plan, like, the monster is, like, central to it. She's got a cool, like, rose thorn whip. It's very good, Dave.
Yeah, so aesthetically, I think she beats the pants off of Kame-Itachi the Sickle Weasel, who had a great concept, but the monster design was a little bit funky.
It was a weasel man with a jetpack, which is cool, but not as cool.
And like bladey hook arms. So I think that it's a great episode.
Really
even
strong
if it's not
episode.
necessarily a Rose Nezare focused episode. And I think the look is cooler enough that I think she's better than Kame-Itachi the Sickle Weasel. I would say my ceiling for her would be Didi Danma, the telephone catalog ordering, the best telephone catalog orderer.
Oh, that was a really clever monster.
I think that's my ceiling. So somewhere between 62 and 55.
Okay, well, right under Didi Danma is the Light Armadillo. The Light Armadillo himself was not super Actually, that's a very... Light Armadillo is another good comparison point. Because the Light Armadillo himself was not super interesting, right? What was interesting about it was the fact that the Light Armadillo was able to create, like, shadow clone Jetman Rangers that were always empowered because I think Maria had, like, plunged that part of the city into constant darkness. So that was really like a Maria episode where there was kind of a monster who was there who sort of got by on the strength of, like, one cool effect that they had.
Well, in that case, I think we give it to Rose Nezare because she looks cooler.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right, so Rose Nezare, new spot 56.
Very nice. Very well done, Rose Nezare. Good for you. Rest in peace, you horrible monster. And that, Dave, that is going to do it for this.
For a record setting.
For this, yes, this very long episode of The Spy Who Loved Megaranger. Before we finish up, I'd like to remind you all you can email the show at supersentaibrothers@gmail.com. If you want to get any updates on future episodes or just want to check out the things that we're talking about on Twitter, we are at Super Sentai Bros. If you like the show, please remember that shining in the iTunes review section, there are 5 stars. If you want to rate or review us on there, that would be very nice of you. Or just tell a friend. That would also be very nice of you, which I believe you would do, because I like to think that you're all very nice people. And you know what else is nice, Dave? Retrograde Orbit Radio, of which we are a member. If you would like to listen to any of the other great Retrograde Orbit Radio shows, you can find them all at retrogradeorbitradio.com. Once again, we are the Super Sentai Brothers. I'm Matt.
I'm Dave.
And we'll see you next week for the greatest show on Earth.